easier for me to find this place, so thank you. Yeah. In certain circles in this country, there seems to be a notion that U.S. foreign policy is based on spreading democracy or improving lives, but I think through the study of its history, that's thoroughly discredited, and people of Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan know that firsthand. In reality, its U.S. policy is driven by its military-industrial complex, which is placing more of an emphasis on its military budget than on its budget on education or healthcare. And it's because of this policy that economic and corporate interests are more important than human interests. I don't think it's any coincidence that ExxonMobil has announced record profits during a period of record oil prices. And it's no coincidence that during the invasion of Baghdad, Iraq's oil ministry was one of the first buildings to be secured and guarded, while libraries and museums were ransacked or looted. Had New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina been as important to this administration as Iraq's oil infrastructure, perhaps federal aid would have arrived sooner. But because of these failed policies, both Americans and Iraqis are suffering, while certain corporate parties are prospering. Now, in the case of Iran, U.S. policy seems to aim at weakening its economy and through sanctions and attempting to undermine its government, hoping for a regime change. And then on top of that, they're also fabricating a false threat from Iran and spreading that, and just to justify their presence in the Middle East. But the effects of these is that they've created a weak economy in Iran where there's high inflation and high unemployment, an exodus of professionals. The myth of Iran as a threat to other countries could lead us to another war. And undermining the current government has only made social and political change harder in Iran, as there's no room for dissidents. But Americans have suffered from these policies as well. These threats against Iran have only driven up the price of oil through market speculation. And according to Robert Nyman of the Huffington Post, he says that lowering these economic sanctions on Iran would have a more immediate and a greater impact on lowering the price of oil than offshore drilling can. And so once again, both Americans and Iranians are suffering from these continued policies. Now, with the case of Afghanistan, we find ourselves in another endless war that can't be won like Iraq. The Taliban claims its support from people who are tired of foreign occupation. And no amount of foreign soldiers is going to defeat a dislike of foreign soldiers. Instead, the way to move forward in Iraq and Afghanistan is to end its military campaigns, to start humanitarian aid. These airstrikes in Afghanistan, which are killing more civilians, and these cross-border raids into Pakistan that we're learning more about every day, could lead us into another war, and against a country with nuclear weapons. Something has to be done soon before this region's made more unstable. And even if the U.S. doesn't want to stay in the region and provide humanitarian aid, they should at least leave, because these countries are more than capable of governing themselves. They're more than capable of developing themselves as members of the international community. And it's been seen historically that foreign intervention in the form of coups or embargoes have actually set these nations back in their development. But so too have the American people been set back by these arrogant and reckless foreign interventions. Our reputation abroad has been diminished, and our sons and daughters have been sent abroad to fight in the corporate interests. And so this new administration, if they want to have change at home, really needs to take a new direction with their foreign policy. We need to hand over all military bases in other nations and close up this military empire, because it's not in our interest or in theirs. Thank you everyone for showing up.